I've been investigating this insurance claim for months, and in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how USAA strategically hid photos, blatantly lied, and scared away their own expert to deny an 87-year-old veteran's claim. We'll uncover a pattern so deliberate it transformed a clear-cut case into a nightmare that's been dragging for over a year. By the end of this video, you'll understand how insurance companies really operate. And if you ever face a similar situation, hopefully you'll recognize these patterns before they trap you too. But to understand how we got here, you need to first meet Mr. Varoujan Derderian. In 1960, Varoujan Derderian was drafted into the US Army. Fluent in Armenian, Arabic, French, and Turkish, he was assigned as a translator, helping bridge gaps between people who otherwise couldn't communicate. Just 4 years earlier, in 1956, he had stepped onto American soil for the first time. He was 18, an Armenian who had grown up in Palestine, part of a diaspora displaced by the Armenian genocide. His family left behind everything they knew, hoping to build a future in the US. But America wasn't easy. He barely spoke English.
I didn't know the language that well. When they talked to me, I want to understand.
So at night, he would sit in front of the television, listening, repeating, practicing, word by word, sentence by sentence, teaching himself the language of his new home. By the time he finished his service, he was determined to build something of his own. First, a business, an auto body shop that he worked in from morning to night. But then, there was one thing he built that meant more than anything else, a place of his own, a home.
I went out trying to find a place to live. And this is the place I really like. I bought the property, and then I built a house the way I want.
And for decades, that home stood strong until February 5th, 2024. On February 5th, Southern California was hit by storms so severe that the state declared an emergency. Rain had pounded the region for days, and Mr. Derderian's home took a direct hit.
The rain started coming in inside of my bedroom. Water had gone everywhere.
3 generations of the Derderian family immediately rushed to help. Father, son, and grandson went up on the roof in the storm and installed tarps to prevent more damage. They called this company ServPro for professional mitigation. ServPro came out, documented the damage with photos, and began emergency services. They filed their claim with USAA and followed every procedure. In essence, they did everything by the book. And this is where things start getting dicey. And I want to introduce you to a few of the key players. You have Mr. Derderian right here in the center of it all. Then you have Mr. Derderian's insurance company, USAA, who he's faithfully paid premiums to for decades. After Mr. Derderian saw the extent of damage to his home, he hired this company, Allied Public Adjusters. Allied is a premier firm that helps document property damage claims and makes sure that the insurance companies play fair and don't take advantage of their policyholders. On March 18th, 2024, someone new shows up unannounced at the Derderian home, a field adjuster sent out by USAA. But here's where things start getting interesting. This field adjuster, he's not actually a USAA employee. He's what's called an independent adjuster, a contractor that's hired by insurance companies to inspect properties and document damage. Think of them kind of like freelance adjusters, available to be hired by any insurance company. So this field adjuster, he gets up on the roof, he takes photos.
They came, he looked at it, he says, oh, okay, he wrote something, then I show him the other places. He says, that's not part of it, that's not part of it, and left. I start thinking, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing.
USAA then put the value to repair Mr. Derderian's house at a mere $30,000, when any competent adjuster could clearly see the damage was worth much more than that. And then, nothing. 4 months of silence regarding the roof. Then finally, in July 2024, USAA responds with a complete denial of the roof claim. This comes from the observations of the same inspection that happened all the way back in March, 4 months before this point. That's when this guy right here, Hudach from Allied Public Adjusters, started asking questions.
So we asked USAA to do what they're required to do, produce their field adjusters report, since that's what they're relying upon to deny the claim, along with the photo documents.
If you're denying someone's claim based on an inspector's observation, shouldn't you have to show what those observations were? Okay, USAA's response to this was puzzling. They refused to provide the report, claiming it was work product. Essentially, they were saying that it was private and that they didn't have to share it. Let me explain why this matters. Insurance companies must share any evidence they use to deny a claim. It's not optional, it's not a courtesy, it's required by law. But for months, USAA refused to share anything, claiming it was all work product. And instead of sharing, they actually made a demand. They now wanted to send out an engineer to inspect the property. And here's where Horace had another question.
So you obviously felt that you had the goods to deny the claim with your field adjuster's report, so produce the report. No, you tell me it's work product. Okay, it's work product. I'll humor you. Now you're asking the insured to grant access yet again for another roof inspection, this time with an engineer, right? He said yes. Okay. What's going to stop you from turning around, I asked the adjuster, and telling me later that, yeah, our engineer inspected the roof, but we're not going to produce that report because that's work product too. His response was, we won't say that. We will produce the report. So then I asked him, okay, you won't produce one report because it's work product, but you will produce this one because it's not work product. Why is one work product and one not work product? And the adjuster, Scott Burks, laughed on the phone and said, to be honest with you, I can't distinguish between the two. I'm just telling you what my manager is telling me to tell you.
So after being confronted with their legal obligations, USAA released what they claimed were all the photos from the field inspection. But there was something off about the set of photos that they provided. There were no immediately apparent pictures of broken tiles, which is suspicious because this ran contrary both to what Mr. Derderian claimed and the initial inspection photos that ServPro took back in February before he even filed the claim. But I want you to look carefully at the photos that they did provide. In the background of one of these photos, what do you see? Broken tiles. The damage that USAA claimed didn't exist. Why weren't any photos of those tiles included in the photo set? And this is where things become really suspicious really fast, because Horace ended up tracking down the field adjuster from the initial inspection.
So I reached out to this field adjuster, introduced myself, and I told him that I'm working on this claim file. It's a USAA claim file. I understand that you were out there in March. We believe that you have lots of photos of broken tiles, roof tiles. And I asked him point blank, do you have your computer with you? Will you open your photos up from that inspection? And the guy did. I told him, they're telling me there's no broken tiles. And on the phone, he's telling me, no broken tiles. I see broken tile, broken tile, broken tile. There are many, many broken tiles. So I asked him, okay, so you photo documented broken tiles. He said, yes. All right, do you have a copy of the report that you submitted? He laughed. He said, listen, I prepare my reports. I submit them to Alacrity, which is the vendor that he goes through, that USAA contracts with. And when I submit my reports to Alacrity, they then may change my field inspection report. That's bizarre. Okay, imagine that. He told me this. He says, I don't even know, even though my name's on the report, I don't know what they've submitted. As bizarre. But okay, what we were able to establish with that phone call is that he saw lots of broken tiles.
USAA had cherry-picked the photos that they sent to Mr. Derderian, and truthfully, they did a sloppy job. On November 19th, 2024, USAA, after seeking the advice of their lawyers, finally released the complete set of photos.
They came back and they confirmed in writing that based on the advice of counsel, we're now producing these documents that the insured should have received months and months earlier.
8 months of denials of claiming documents didn't exist and of refusing to provide evidence. The photos that Mr. Derderian and Allied received confirmed exactly what their own field adjuster had told Horace. There were broken tiles documented in the original inspection. And this revelation exposed something far more troubling than just hidden photos. Because while Mr. Derderian and Allied were fighting for this evidence, another story was unfolding. One that would show that this wasn't just incompetence or a mistake. This was a strategy. On September 4th, 2024, before the roof photos were released, Allied submitted new findings to USAA. Testing had revealed asbestos in the Derderian home. And this wasn't the first test. An initial survey found no asbestos, but knowing the age of the home, Allied ordered a more thorough inspection, and that's because pre-1978 homes frequently contained asbestos in building materials, and the Derderian's home was built in 1975. So Allied brought in this company, Titan Environmental. Titan is a company that's regularly used by USAA's own contractors. In other words, they're insurance friendly. Titan's results were crystal clear.
Sure enough, it came back positive for asbestos containing material. So based on that, there was an accidental disturbance and contamination of asbestos containing material throughout the residence.
Both the building and the contents inside of the building were affected. Now, USAA's initial response looked reasonable. They accepted Titan's findings, they paid for the testing, and they agreed to cover the building cleanup. But then came the twist. They wouldn't pay to clean the contaminated contents inside of the building. Now remember, the building itself and the contents inside of the building were both contaminated. They're paying for the building, but they didn't agree to pay for the cleanup of the contaminated contents inside of the building. Think about that. USAA just doesn't want to pay for it. What's their argument? Their argument lies in something called a named peril policy. And this is really important. I need you to stick with me. Here's what that means. Insurance policies come in two flavors. The first is an open peril policy. An open peril policy covers everything except for what it specifically excludes. The second is a named peril policy, which only covers what it specifically includes. So one covers everything except for the causes of loss that are excluded. The other covers only the causes of loss that are named. Now, part of Mr. Derderian's policy is named peril, the personal property coverage. USAA points to this and says asbestos contamination isn't specifically listed as covered, so we won't pay. But here's what they missed. Think of it like dominoes. One domino hits the other and starts a chain reaction that makes the last domino fall. Me tipping over the first domino is what caused that last domino to fall. Now let's think about the damage to Mr. Derderian's home. The storm hits, which is covered by the policy, damages the roof, water comes in through the roof, the Derderians tarp the roof to prevent more water from coming in, which is their duty as a policyholder, and then ServPro comes in, and to stop even more damage from happening, wet materials must be removed. It's required mitigation. And removing those materials disturbs the asbestos in the walls and subsequently contaminates the home and its personal property. Now, what was the incident? What was the initial incident that caused the chain of events leading to asbestos contamination? The storm, covered under the policy. The law recognizes this chain of events. It's called efficient proximate cause. When a covered event, like the storm, starts a sequence that leads to more damage, the new damage is also covered. USAA isn't disputing any of these facts. They agree the storm happened, they agree mitigation was necessary, they agree the asbestos got disrupted during the mitigation, and they even agree the contents are contaminated. They're just trying to break the chain.
We provided them with the citations from FAIR regulations that support coverage for this because it's collateral damage caused during mitigation. After we submitted that documentation, they said, okay, fine, we're considering it. And for months, they said and did nothing other than to say, we continue to be considering it. Why is that important? Number one, now we have contaminated contents items that are sitting inside this house. Sequentially, those need to be moved out of the house so that repairs can begin, so the demolition can begin, so that then we can have a truer picture of what the scope of the claim is going to look like.
They didn't want to do nothing, and then they didn't want to get all the furniture out of the house so we could put it in the storage so they could repair it.
And USAA during this time keeps asking him why he hasn't moved them, all while refusing to make a decision about cleaning them.
When we was in the service, when your superior said something, we done it. But over here, there is no superior, I guess.
And by this point, it's early 2025. After months of delay, USAA pulls probably one of the most offensive moves I've seen so far. Remember, they've already accepted Titan's findings, the company that confirmed asbestos. They paid for the testing. They acknowledged the contamination in writing. They paid for the building cleanup, acknowledging that yes, asbestos contamination had occurred. But suddenly, they stopped questioning coverage. Instead, they asked to send out a third environmental company to check if contamination even existed. They flipped their position entirely. I want to emphasize here that they already acknowledged that the building and the building's contents were contaminated. And now they're asking to send out a third environmental company to check if contamination even exists? And it's hilarious because it's the same playbook we saw with the photos. You deny based on evidence that you control, you delay when challenged, and you change position when you're finally caught. But there was one more revelation coming, one that would expose this system more clearly than ever before. Let's rewind back to October of 2024, 1 month before USAA released a full set of photos. While still refusing to provide evidence that supported their original denial, they wanted to send out an engineer to determine if the roof damage was actually caused by the storm. Think about that. They had already denied their claim without an engineer. But when Allied challenged that denial and pointed out evidence of broken tiles, suddenly USAA needed an expert opinion. They brought in Keystone experts and assigned structural engineer Leo Schwartzberg. But before any inspection happened, Varoujan got on the phone with Leo. The conversation exposed everything.
Leo shared with me openly on the phone, their engineer, USAA, that the inspection is not even necessary because months after the loss, he would not be able to distinguish between mitigation damage and wind damage. This is a waste of time. Oh, we're going to try to deny it. But if you challenge the denial, all right, well then we'll hire an expert to bolster the denial that we've already decided we want to make. This reeks of bad faith.
After Varoujan explained how USAA was concealing photos of the broken tiles, he said, "It looks like you have a bad faith case, and USAA is not being honest." This is from their own chosen expert. And when confronted with their own expert's opinion, USAA's claim manager, Catherine Norman, said that she disagreed with Leo.
And my response to her is, "Are you an engineer?" And she said, "No, I'm not." So your disagreement means nothing. She had decided that she's not going to pay for this roof, and she would stop at nothing to deny Mr. Derderian his rightful benefits.
A month later, in November, just after USAA finally released a full photo set, something interesting happened. Keystone called to schedule an inspection, but not with Leo. They wanted to bring in a different engineer. In a pretty tense call with Keystone, Varoujan laid out exactly what this looked like. Their first engineer says it's pointless. USAA disagrees, and suddenly there's a new engineer? This had all the signs of expert shopping, bringing in new experts until USAA gets the answer that USAA wants. And when confronted, Keystone did back down, and they promised any inspection that they have would be with Leo. But when Varoujan called Leo directly in February of 2025, he learned the truth. Leo had already told Keystone that he wanted nothing to do with this claim. Their own expert was refusing to participate in what he saw was happening. Look at how this system works. First, you control the information, you hide photos showing damage, you claim documents are privileged when they're not, and you release partial evidence while concealing the rest. Second, you use time as pressure. 4 months of silence before denying the roof claim. Months of delay on the asbestos review. Every passing month increases strain on the homeowner, while USAA has vast resources to wait out the claim process. And third, when caught, you change positions entirely. What was previously accepted becomes questioned, and what was previously questioned becomes irrelevant. The goal isn't consistency, it's exhaustion. Now, the numbers tell one story. USAA initially offered $30,000, but the actual damage of the claim is now well over $1 million. And the numbers are extremely important, but the cost that I think we're missing is the year and counting of an 87-year-old veteran who is now caught in a maze of paperwork and procedure.
Mr. Derderian's 87 years old, retired Army veteran who served his community and wants to spend the remaining years of his life in his home that he built for himself in the 70s, not fighting an insurance company whose aim is to cheat him out of his benefits.
This insurance company is not making his own decision, yes or no. If it's no, okay, prove it, it's no. I'm really frustrated. I don't understand it at all. Here I am out 1 year out of my house, and nothing is still happening.
In February of 2025, Allied made one final attempt, reaching out to USAA's Vice President of Claims, Lisa Lynn, seeking direct intervention. But when even that failed to bring honest negotiation, Mr. Derderian's path became clear. His battle for his home, his retirement sanctuary that he built in the 70s, would have to be fought in court. And it wasn't just about the money anymore. It's about holding a powerful corporation accountable for systematically abusing an elderly veteran who had faithfully paid his insurance company for decades. The choice was made. Litigation papers are being filed, and Mr. Derderian's fight for justice continues.